Hulami and Llamas sat with Boxo, who had almost forgotten they were still inside a dungeon. The sky above them shifted with the seasons, and the warm weather made him daydream about selling ice cream. His thoughts were interrupted when Miguel suddenly appeared, kneeling dramatically and asking Boxo to take him as a disciple. Boxo simply greeted him with a casual, "Hello there," but Miguel took it as an acceptance. The girls immediately started teasing him about being Boxo's apprentice. Boxo, however, felt he had nothing to teach and watched in mild confusion as Miguel eagerly began cleaning him. Llamas quickly intervened, reminding Miguel that cleaning Boxo was her responsibility. Miguel apologized for overstepping just as Director Bear arrived, summoning them to an urgent meeting in the dead zone. At the meeting, Director Bear introduced Boxo and his friends to the other directors and explained that they had survived an encounter with the Nether Lord, the Demon Lord's left-arm general. The revelation shocked the others, who considered the Nether Lord a major threat. Boxo quietly recalled how he had been forced to turn into a makeshift defibrillator to restart his friends' hearts after the Nether Lord stopped them. He also noticed Calroy was present. When Llamas asked what a left-arm general meant, Director Bear explained that the Demon Lord rules from the north and is considered the head. The left arm, he clarified, was the third most powerful in the hierarchy. The directors debated their next move before agreeing with Director Bear's plan: throw everything they had at the Nether Lord. They resolved to work together to take him down. Before long, elite hunters from every region began to gather. Some approached Boxo and his group, even buying water and soup from him. Boxo was surprised to see an elderly couple among the assault squad, and even more shocked to find that Hawkeye, the school director and orphanage owner who had taught Sui archery, was part of the team. The elderly couple greeted Hawkeye warmly, and Boxo couldn't believe they knew each other. The aces decided to have a pre-battle party, but one of the younger hunters openly questioned why old people were even there. Hulami scolded him to watch his manners, which led to the man challenging her, until Calroy arrived. Recognizing Calroy as the infamous leader of the Misfits, the man paled, panicked, and backed away on all fours. Calroy explained that his own party was out of commission, so he needed all the allies he could get. Old woman Yumi revealed she had been blessed with both swordsmanship and healing light. Her husband Shim added that he was skilled in magic. Hulami and Llamas followed with their own introductions. Boxo realized that, surprisingly, they had formed a well-balanced party. He was unsure if the older couple could keep up in a real fight, but he trusted that Calroy would make the right calls when it counted. The next day, they split into several teams to hunt for the Nether Lord. Director Bear apologized for dragging everyone into such a dangerous mission, but Yumi reassured him they were comrades. Moments later, she sensed monsters ahead. Hawkeye quickly loosed 3 arrows in succession, killing them, impressing everyone. Shim then noticed the remaining monsters still hadn't detected them, so he unleashed a blast of magic that wiped them out completely. Yumi charges forward, cutting down the skeletons in her path with swift, precise strikes. Director Bear, watching her fight, smiles and admits they haven't lost their edge. Later, they all share a meal together. Boxo's cooking is such a hit that everyone praises it, and he's happy knowing he's keeping morale high. That night, Llamas trains under the moonlight. Yumi appears and advises her to lower her center of gravity to improve her power and accuracy. Llamas tries it and immediately notices her punches hit harder, but Yumi warns her that she must learn to fight without relying on Boxo. His weight gives her just the right handicap to control her strength, but she needs to master her own power. Meanwhile, Hulami privately confides to Boxo her theory: the Nether Lord likely let Llamas escape on purpose, expecting her to call for reinforcements. Hulami suspects he wants the ace. The next day, they continue their search for the Nether Lord and stumble upon another hunter team battling his minions. Director Bear orders Boxo's party to prepare for combat. Hulami reassures Llamas to stay calm. They have plenty of ace hunters here, and Director Bear instructs everyone to hold out until reinforcements arrive. They charge in, cutting through the Nether Lord's minions. Boxo transforms into a power washer, using his hose and telekinesis to shred the undead forces. For a moment, it seems they've won, until the Nether Lord revives the fallen skeletons. Realizing they won't stay down until the Nether Lord himself is defeated, Director Bear calls for a retreat just as the Nether Lord begins gathering a massive amount of magic power. Everyone scrambles for cover. A deafening explosion follows, obliterating the battlefield. When the smoke clears, the hunters have survived, and the Nether Lord, impressed, admits he underestimated them. He summons more minions. Boxo realizes they are at a disadvantage and must act fast. The Nether Lord, aware of Llamas's blessing of might, knows she is the only one capable of harming him directly. That's when we see the real Boxo. Llamas had thrown him high into the air just before the blast. As Boxo descends, we learn he's carrying a magic item crafted by Hulami. Mid-air, he transforms into a massive ice vending machine. The Nether Lord tries to halt him with magic but struggles under his weight. Boxo slams into the ground, covering the area in ice, then activates a pre-prepared defibrillator to send a surge of electricity through the ice and into the Nether Lord. The blast knocks the villain unconscious. Boxo smashes him and reverts to his original form. Llamas rushes over to check if he's okay, but the victory is short-lived. The Nether Lord rises, battered but alive, and comments that the staff is too precious to lose. He commends them for defeating his left arm, then declares that his real objective is complete. He explains that when hunters or monsters die in the dungeon, their power turns into energy that accumulates within it. His plan is to use that energy to create even stronger monsters, starting by killing everyone present. Hulami quickly realizes that the other areas are defenseless since all the ace hunters are gathered there. The group rushes back to the village to protect it from the Nether Lord, then returns to the Hunters Association, and Director Bear's assistant reports grim news. A swarm of monsters attacked the village a few days ago. Most of the inhabitants failed to evacuate. Director Bear asks about the survivors' condition, and she explains that non-combatants are gathered upstairs while the hunters stand guard on the terrace. He praises her for her work, but she suddenly collapses from exhaustion. The guards and hunters immediately mobilize to defend the association. Llamas thinks about joining the fight, but Director Bear assigns her to help distribute meals since no one has been eating properly. Boxo notices that she's frustrated about not fighting. She still wants to find Manami, so he focuses on providing food and water to everyone. Together, he and Llamas bring supplies to the second floor. There, a girl named May asks about Shim and Yumi, and Llamas reassures her that they're safe. Just then, Manami rushes in. Llamas is relieved to see she escaped the monsters safely. Hulami tells Boxo that Shim and Yumi need to be informed of the situation, and Boxo changes form to help her deliver the message. But before they can do more, they see that the monsters are already approaching. From the terrace, Hulami sees the village is completely destroyed. Boxo insists they still have work to do, and the hunters launch into battle. Hulami passes on the good news about Shim and Yumi's descendants, giving the two strength to fight even harder. Miguel unleashes his sword techniques, cutting down waves of monsters. Seeing everyone push themselves to the limit, Boxo vows not to fall behind, but Llamas notices how exhausted the hunters are. She hauls them back inside, promising to take over the fight. Boxo realizes her spirit has been reignited since reuniting with Manami. Shirley tells Llamas to take a short break, and Boxo offers her a drink. She thanks him for being such a gentleman, joking that it's a shame he isn't actually a guy. She orders Shirley to get some rest, then heads out to face the monsters. In a fierce display, she grabs one monster and uses its body to fling the others away. But Boxo notices the defensive wall has been breached. That must be how the monsters got in. After Llamas finishes off the wave, Boxo sees she's exhausted and hands her water. The hunters, now recovered, rush back outside. Boxo tries to convince Llamas to rest, but she refuses, determined to keep fighting. He remembers how her old village was destroyed by monsters and understands her resolve, but also fears she'll die if she pushes herself too far. At last, Boxo decides he must stop her. He calls out her name, speaking for the first time. She freezes, shocked that he can talk, and in that instant, her body gives out. Hulami, who overheard everything, quietly steps forward and confirms she heard Boxo's words too. Boxo admits he can talk, but only a little. She quickly realizes that he can't speak fluently. He's limited by the number of syllables he can use. It's revealed that he can only rearrange the sounds from the lines he already knows and form new words from them. She says she wants to learn more about him, but Boxo insists that it's not the right time to chat and asks her to take him to the terrace. From there, they see another wave of monsters approaching. Boxo improvises by making cola bombs, combining soda with Mentos, and uses them to blast the monsters apart. The hunters stand guard over the association while everyone else sleeps. Suddenly, the band of bears appears, demanding food. Boxo serves them their favorite fried chicken, which they devour instantly. One of the bears explains that they scoured the entire village for survivors but found no one. He adds that the monsters are gathering near a massive hole in the wall, and they even spotted larger beasts approaching from afar, a revelation that shocks Boxo. Hulami suspects the king frog fiends might appear next, which worries the hunters, but Miguel steps up, encouraging everyone to work together to repel the monsters. Boxo notices Miguel trying to look brave but sees his fist trembling. He hands Miguel a drink and praises him for doing well, while the hunters discuss their battle strategy. Llamas tells Boxo that they should protect everyone, and we learn that he has a plan, but he's unsure if Llamas will agree to it. When he asks her to put him on the front lines, she refuses, worried that the enemies could appear at any moment. Boxo then turns to Hulami, begging her to grant his request. She challenges him to call her by her name. He admits he doesn't have the sounds to pronounce it, realizing she's just testing him. Instead, he calls her cute, which leaves her flustered. Boxo transforms, inflates his balloons, and takes to the skies. We learn he has 100,000 points thanks to Director Bear, who paid him in advance with gold coins. He shifts into his ice vending machine form and blankets the ground with ice, knowing the monsters are cold-blooded and vulnerable to extreme temperatures. As the monsters approach, he worries the ice might not be enough, so he creates massive ice spikes and hurls them at the horde. To his relief, the plan works, and he keeps firing ice attacks, intent on wiping out as many monsters as possible. But Hulami reminds him that using his abilities costs points. Boxo isn't concerned at first, but he soon realizes his points are dropping rapidly and decides to retreat. When he returns, Llamas is furious that he went through with his plan despite her warning, and Boxo must face her anger. He considers staying quiet so she'll forgive him, but she already knows what he's thinking and continues to scold him. The next day, Boxo gives everyone ice cream to help them cool down in the summer heat, and they all praise how delicious it is. Afterward, Director Bear convenes a war council to discuss their situation. He stresses the importance of closing the hole in the wall. Hulami suggests using earth magic to seal it, but the director reminds them they only have 3 earth mages available. They then consider using Boxo as a living barrier, but Hulami points out that keeping him in his freezer form requires money. The director thinks about using Boxo to buy time while they repair the wall, but his assistant reveals they only have 60 gold left. Boxo explains that's worth about 60,000 points, but he remembers how quickly he spent his points fighting monsters and says it won't be enough. At that moment, Sayori joins them and announces she has a plan. They form a party to retrieve the safe from Sayori's mansion so they'll have enough money for Boxo's transformation. When they arrive, she finds her home destroyed and breaks into tears. The first time Boxo has ever seen her cry. She quickly apologizes for losing her composure and leads everyone to the underground safe. Along the way, they notice her ruined paintings, but she dismisses them as cheap replicas. In a hidden basement, she opens the vault to reveal her family's treasury. Everyone is stunned by her wealth. Knowing that Boxo can't accept gold bars, she lets him borrow all the gold coins instead. He thanks her by name and she smiles, glad to hear him say it properly. Llamas, a bit jealous, insists that he say her name too, which he does, though Sayori teases that he pronounces her name better. Boxo recalls the tension between the two girls. Sayori hands over the gold coins but reminds Boxo that this is only a loan and the Hunters Association must repay her. Boxo suspects she's just hiding her embarrassment and privately notes that she's a good person deep down. When they return to the Hunter Association, they find everyone suffering in the blazing heat. The hunters rush to Boxo, begging for something cold, so he hands out ice cream again, giving everyone relief. Director Bear asks if Boxo can transform into his giant form with the funds they have. Boxo confirms he can maintain it for about an hour. The director proposes launching an attack at dusk when the enemy starts to withdraw, but Hulami suggests waiting until the monsters launch their full assault late at night, when the wall will be left unguarded. She argues that the darkness will give them an advantage and allow them to get into position undetected. Boxo agrees her plan might work. Though the director worries about putting the defenders at greater risk, he ultimately decides to follow her strategy, believing it offers their best chance at victory. As night falls, the group forms a task force to repair the wall, joined by 3 earth mages for the mission. Director Bear emphasizes Boxo's crucial role, which makes him feel the pressure to live up to expectations. Before they depart, the director instructs the guards to remain behind in case they fail to return, and notes that Boxo has left enough food for everyone. When the team reaches the wall, they encounter a group of monsters. Director Bear believes they have no choice but to fight, but Shim suggests waiting for an opening. They bide their time until the monsters attack the association. When a monster spots them, Shirley swiftly takes it out. Director Bear jokingly calls her by her old nickname, which annoys her, and Boxo realizes she was once a hunter. Director Bear signals it's time to seal the hole. Llamas wishes Boxo luck and tells him to come back alive, which reassures him. Before taking off, he hands her a drink and promises to return. As he flies, he's shocked by the sheer number of monsters outside, but he doesn't hesitate. Transforming into his giant form, he blocks the hole, noticing that the beasts retreat as though under someone's command. Using a function designed to fix vending machines, he repeatedly summons concrete slabs, stacking them until the wall is completely sealed. Returning to his normal form, Director Bear orders the Earth Mages to begin repairs, but a new wave of monsters approaches. He attacks them with his claws, proving himself a powerful fighter. The Earth Mages reinforce the wall, while the band of bears use their roaring blessing to knock out nearby monsters. Llamas assists with repairs as Shim, Yumi, and Miguel work to clear the battlefield. Boxo notes that everything is proceeding according to plan until he sees the monsters organizing again. He spots a suspicious black-robed mage and flies toward him, contemplating killing him but deciding against it since they need information. He crashes down nearby, trapping the panicked mage inside a barrier. When the mage orders his monsters to destroy the barrier, Boxo calmly observes that they can't break through as long as he has enough points. He demands the mage stop the attack, but the man refuses, so Boxo resorts to intimidation. Mixing cola with Mentos, he forces the man to drink the explosive concoction. Though he hates resorting to cruelty, Boxo reminds himself that lives are at stake. When he prepares a second cola bomb, the terrified mage believes it's poison and, finally, relinquishes control of the monsters. They suddenly walk away, leaving everyone confused. Boxo calls them back, and Llamas rushes to his side, only to freeze when she sees the man with them. Her eyes widen in recognition. He's the one who destroyed her village. Everyone quickly realizes that he's controlling the monsters with a ring. But before anyone can react, Llamas starts pounding on Boxo's barrier in fury. Boxo panics as he sees his points, rapidly draining. She demands that he drop the barrier so she can punish the man for what he did, but the others hold her back. Director Bear steps forward and firmly tells her to control her anger, reminding her that they must focus on saving as many lives as possible. Realizing she lost her composure, Llamas takes a deep breath and apologizes. Director Bear begins interrogating the man, his tone so threatening that the man quickly panics and blurts out everything he knows. Boxo watches quietly as Llamas repairs the wall, unsure of what to say. Finally, she breaks the silence, apologizing again, this time for wanting revenge. She explains that it was the reason she became a hunter in the first place. Tears well in her eyes, and Boxo wishes he could do something to ease her pain. He finally speaks, telling her that he wants to stay by her side no matter what happens, that he wants to be there to make her happy when she's sad. He promises to be with her until the end, but Llamas turns red, thinking he just proposed to her. She says she wants to get to know him better first. Boxo wonders if romance between a human and a vending machine is even possible, his screen glowing bright red. Llamas thanks him for cheering her up, and Boxo realizes she was just teasing him. Afterward, the hunters defeat the monsters and repair the wall, making the village safe once more. Days later, everyone is exhausted from the heat and beg Boxo to give them something cold. Instead, he takes to the sky and leads them to the site of the depression, now transformed into a pool. Llamas grins and dives in with Hulami, exclaiming how refreshing it feels. She calls for Shiori to join them, and when Shiori refuses, Llamas drags her into the water anyway. Boxo watches happily as everyone enjoys themselves. We learn that he filled the hole with ice cubes, creating a temporary swimming pool. The villagers organize a small summer festival. Director Bear reminds everyone not to go too wild since resources are still limited. The four bears beg Boxo for a treat, and he obliges by transforming into a shaved ice ice machine. They have no idea what it is but decide to try it, and are blown away by how delicious it tastes. Boxo wishes he had more than just 3 flavors of syrup, so he grabs the fresh fruits he's been selling and uses them as toppings, giving everyone a refreshing way to enjoy the hot summer day. Everyone happily enjoys the food, and Llamas remarks that Boxo is practically an all-purpose magic item, but Boxo simply tells her to just call him a vending machine. Later, he spends some quiet time with Llamas. She wonders aloud if she still has a purpose as a hunter, but Boxo gently encourages her to just enjoy life alongside him. We learn that he has cherished every moment spent with her and wants to stay by her side. Remembering his promise to remain with her until the very end, Llamas decides to follow his suggestion, saying they still have plenty left to do together. When they return to the Hunter Association, Director Bear informs them that Hulami has repaired the transfer circle. Though it still isn't fully functional, they can only send 3 people at a time. He explains that they plan to send people to the Origin Strait. Director Bear names Hulami, Llamas, and Boxo as the first team. They accept the mission, and Miguel chooses to accompany them. The director wishes them luck, and the group departs for the Origin Strait. Upon arriving, they notice a series of footprints. Hulami deduces that the others must have turned back. Meanwhile, Croy is seen leading the villagers as they desperately try to hold off monsters. Miguel suddenly charges in, unleashing a powerful sword skill that wipes out the creatures. Croy is relieved to see reinforcements, and even more so when he spots Boxo. They eagerly buy food and drinks from him, and although Boxo struggles to keep up with demand, he manages to serve everyone. Croy thanks him, saying he just saved their lives. When Croy mentions the stairs to the surface, he's surprised to hear Boxo respond directly. Before he can ask further questions, Hulami interrupts, demanding to know why Croy didn't use the stairs to evacuate. Suddenly, Sui appears, begging for food. Everyone eats together, and Croy's group expresses their relief at Boxo's arrival. Sui devours her meal so quickly that the other children tell her to slow down, but she can't help herself. Croy notes that once Hulami fully repairs the transfer circle, they'll be able to evacuate everyone. Just then, Director Origin arrives and personally thanks Boxo for saving the villagers. She instructs the group to move to Clearflow Lake Village and hold out until repairs are complete. The villagers cheer for her. The next day, Llamas and Boxo join a search party headed to a nearby prison in hopes of rescuing any remaining survivors who have taken refuge there. Origin explains to the group that the criminals locked in the prison are hopeless scum with no chance of redemption. Still, her curiosity gets the better of her, and she asks her assistant about one particular inmate. At that moment, the group realizes that all the cells are empty, but then they notice a strange man lingering nearby. Origin immediately recognizes him as the very pervert they were just discussing, Heavy. Instead of denying it, Have casually admits that he lives true to his instincts. He tells them not to be alarmed because he has no interest in people themselves, only their well-worn footwear. When Origin asks how he managed to build a collection while locked up, Have proudly reveals that he released the other prisoners when monsters began attacking. Origin is horrified, reminding him that those prisoners were dangerous, but Have calmly explains that he lured the monsters to them with magic. Origin suspects he's lying, but Sui, who can sense truth, confirms that Have is being completely honest. He gratefully calls Sui his friend, though she quickly corrects him, saying that isn't the case. She also reveals that Have is a member of Croy's group. Have then goes on an enthusiastic explanation about his obsession. He doesn't like new shoes because they lack history, but shoes worn by hunters, those are perfect because they're filled with life. Llama scolds him for taking other people's footwear, but Have insists he would never stoop to theft. Instead, he persuades the owners to sell their used footwear and pays a fair price for them. Sui complains that his behavior gives their group a bad reputation, and Origin asks why he didn't fight the monsters directly if he's so powerful. Heavy explains that he simply didn't want to get involved, but he reassures them that he didn't let innocent people die. To prove it, he lifts his magic, revealing that he had protected the villagers all along. The group realizes that everyone is safe, and Origin, stunned, admits she had misjudged him. Later, when they bring the survivors back to the village, Origin reluctantly hands over her boots, and Have immediately remarks that he can already feel their history. Before he can savor them too much, Filmina knocks him out, muttering that he's sick in the head. Kelroy returns Origin's boots and warns her that she can't let Have keep them. He whispers something in her ear that makes her turn pale and run off in a panic. Boxo reflects on the situation. Hayave then casually approaches Boxo and buys a cup of warm tea, but instead of drinking it, immediately, he pours it into one of his boots. He proudly explains that this boot was worn by a lady hunter for 12 years. He admits he can only enjoy its scent for about a week before it fades. As he sips the tea from his boot, Heavy cheerfully tells Boxo to relax, saying that life is too short to be uptight. He even suggests that Boxo has the same spirit as him, an enthusiast who follows his passions. But Boxo firmly disagrees, insisting they are nothing alike. After the meal, Hulami explains that she has modified the transfer circle so that it will now only return them to the clear flow lake. She assures them that monsters won't be able to use it to sneak into the village. Calroy suggests that they all return once things have calmed down, and Sui complains about being paired with Hiave. Calroy dismisses her complaints, telling her to just put up with it, while Hiave promises to protect her, which only makes things worse as she shudders at his touch. Unable to handle his advances, she starts shooting arrows at him in frustration, though Hiave easily dodges every shot. Trying to keep things under control, Calroy invites Boxo and the others to the Misfits base, which he explains is located in the Origin Strait. He says he wants to discuss something important with them. Boxo can feel that the atmosphere among the Misfits has shifted. The mood is more serious than before, but Sui and Heve are still bickering in the background. Croy orders them to stop messing around, but Sui is stubbornly determined to land at least one hit. Croy advises Boxo to wait until everyone has calmed down before heading to the base together. When they finally arrive, Hulami admits that she didn't expect the Misfits base to be located in the Origin Strait. Sui explains that they purposely chose a discreet location so it wouldn't attract attention. During the walk, Llamas asks how long Sui has been part of the group, and Sui reveals it has been less than 2 years. Hedy smugly mentions that he's her senior, but quickly clarifies that seniority doesn't really matter among them, and in fact, he doesn't even respect Shiru and Akka as his seniors despite them being original members. He explains that the first members of the Misfits were Calroy, Filmaina, Shiru, and Akka. This revelation surprises Sui, who wonders why those four often vanish together for long periods of time. Miguel remarks that he has noticed something strange about Shiru and Akka, but decides to keep his suspicions to himself for now, worried that he might just be imagining things. Soon, they spot a strange building that they assume must be the base, but Sui reveals a hidden passage nearby that serves as the true entrance. The group follows her inside and, finally, meets Calroy and the other core members. Calroy gathers everyone in a large room and tells them that he wants to share his true goal. He asks if they know about the rumor that clearing a dungeon allows you to have your wish granted. Hedy scoffs, saying it's just a legend, but Calroy reveals that it's true. Another team has successfully cleared a dungeon and had their wishes fulfilled. He explains that after a dungeon is cleared, it disappears entirely, but no one inside dies. Instead, they are ejected safely. He then decides to share his deepest secret. Leading them into a separate, mysterious room, he shows them a crystal coffin with a young boy sleeping inside. Miguel immediately realizes the boy is still alive. Croy quietly reveals that this is his son and confesses that he and Filmaina have been married for nearly 20 years. The shocking revelation leaves everyone speechless, Shiru and Akka included, until Croy adds that Shiru and Akka are also their children. The group is stunned, though Miguel admits that he had already suspected as much because Shiru and Akka share the same aura as their parents. Calroy glances at Hedy, surprised that he didn't lose his composure at the news, but Hedy explains that he had already sensed the connection. Llamas then asks if the boy in the crystal is Shiru and Akka's younger brother, and Shiru confirms that they are actually triplets. Hulami recognizes the crystal coffin as a rare magical item that stops time for whoever is inside, preventing them from aging. Croy reveals that his son was born with a terrible curse, a negative blessing given by an evil god. Filmaina elaborates, explaining that their son received the blessing of decay, which causes his body to rot and destroys anything he touches. Because of this, he can't live a normal life. To make things worse, he also possesses the blessing of hyper recovery, which constantly regenerates his body even as it decays. This means that he is in constant pain as his body rots and heals over and over again. Llamas, horrified, asks why he would have been given such a cruel blessing. Calroy then then confesses that years ago they annihilated a group of hunters, but before dying, the hunters used a cursed item as revenge, and that curse manifested as the blessing of decay in his son. Croy solemnly declares that his wish is to remove the curse and save his child, explaining that his entire family is willing to do whatever it takes to achieve that goal. However, time is running out. The crystal coffin will stop functioning within a year or two, leaving their son to suffer once again. Calroy then asks everyone to join them and follow the Nether Lord, believing that doing so is their only chance to clear the dungeon in time. Sui objects, reminding him that the Nether Lord once tried to kill them all, but Calroy insists that he will do anything to save his son. Hulami presses him on how he plans to ally with the Nether Lord, and Calroy explains that one of the commanders in the Origin Strait is willing to arrange a meeting. The Nether Lord's goal is for them to defeat the dungeon's final boss so that he can take control of the dungeon. Hulami warns that the Nether Lord is likely to betray them in the end, but Calroy says that they are out of options. Without the Nether Lord's help, they won't be able to clear the dungeon in time. Boxo and his friends refuse to go along with the plan, preparing themselves for battle. Hetty declares that he'll bring Calroy back to his senses, and Boxo, quickly, puts up a barrier to protect Llamas and the other girls, worried that she still doesn't have full control of her blessing. The fight begins. Croy clashes with Hervé, praising his skills even as he manages to land a scratch across his opponent's face. Shiru and Aka team up against Miguel, dodging his powerful sword strikes. Aka comments that one blow would have killed him if it had connected. Sui fires an arrow at Filmina, but it's effortlessly blocked by a wall of water. Boxo hesitates, considering joining the battle, but he fears accidentally hurting his allies. During the clash, Croy reveals that his blade is poisoned, but assures Hetty that it isn't fatal. However, he is surprised that Hetty seems unaffected despite being cut. Hetty explains that he used his blessing to remove the pain. Croy is shocked to learn that Hetty's illusions aren't magic at all. They are the result of his ability to manipulate the senses of everyone around him, a rare and powerful blessing. Hulami confirms this, explaining that sensory manipulation is an exceptionally uncommon gift. Croy wonders if Hetty's power could be used to block his son's pain, but Hetty shakes his head sadly, saying that his blessing cannot be used to interfere with other people's senses, only to manipulate perceptions. Shiru and Aka struggle to keep up with Miguel, shocked at just how powerful he truly is. Every strike feels like a near miss with death, and sweat drips down their faces as they try to hold their ground. Just when it seems like they might be overwhelmed, Calroy steps forward and tells them it's, finally, time to make their move. He invokes his secret blessing, a strange, unseen power, and Hetty suddenly collapses to the ground, screaming in pain. Boxo, watching the scene unfold, is startled and wonders what just happened. He reassures himself that Calroy shouldn't be able to escape since he's trapped inside the barrier. But then, Calroy uses his blessing again, and to Boxo's shock, his barrier shatters as if it never existed. Confused and alarmed, he struggles to understand what Calroy's ability actually is. Filmina seizes the opportunity, summoning a dense mist that blankets the entire area and blinds everyone. Using the cover, she leads her family as they make a daring escape. Miguel tenses, considering giving chase, but Hulami grabs his arm and warns him not to. They know nothing about Croy's blessing, she argues, and running blindly after them could be too dangerous. Hetty, who was writhing in pain moments ago, suddenly gets back on his feet, perfectly fine. Sui raises an eyebrow and wonders aloud if he was just faking it, but Hetty clarifies that he wasn't. Croy's blessing had, completely, blocked his own power, and the poison prevented him from moving. Hulami frowns, piecing things together, and concludes that Croy's ability must allow him to nullify other blessings entirely. With this new understanding, they decide to retreat and report the incident to the village. When they return, Director Bear listens to the full account, his expression hardening. He, quickly, places Calroy and his group on the wanted list. Hetty, however, speculates that they deliberately left their son behind as a message, a sign that they're willing to risk everything to save him. Boxo, despite everything that's happened, finds he can't truly hate them. He understands their desperation and feels conflicted. Meanwhile, Miguel wonders aloud how Calroy's group plans to reach the final strait. Hulami suggests two possibilities. Either the Nether Lord will grant them a magic item that allows them to travel travel between areas, or they will use a transfer circle. Hedy, however, doubts they'll clear the dungeon anytime soon. They simply don't have the strength to take on the final boss. That means they'll need to recruit allies. Hulami recalls that the Misfit group still has 2 unaccounted for members, and Hedy suspects Kelroy will attempt to recruit them. Director Bear immediately suggests reaching out to those 2 before Kelroy does, but Hedy admits he doesn't know where they are, and Hulami reminds everyone that travel between straits isn't freely available. With few options, they decide to head for the Clearflow Lake. At the transfer circle, Hulami activates the mechanism, but something feels off. Her eyes widen in alarm as she senses tampering and shouts for everyone to get away. Before anyone can react, their bodies are, suddenly, frozen in place. Boxo blacks out for a moment, and when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in a completely empty room. Panic sets in as he realizes he must have been sent to another strait. He worries about the others and wonders what his next move should be. Suddenly, Director Bear and Hulami appear beside him. Boxo is confused. Why aren't they with Llamas and the rest of the group? After looking around, they quickly deduce that they've been sent to the Labyrinth Strait. Hulami concludes that Kelroy must have tampered with the transfer circle to redirect them here. She examines it and reveals that it doesn't have enough power to send them to Clearflow Lake anymore. To fix it, they'll need a magic stone. With no other choice, they decide to go to the Hunter Association for help. Director Bear picks up Boxo and carries him there. When they arrive, they see that the entire association is in disarray. Adventurers are exhausted, and everyone is struggling to deal with an increase in monster attacks. Feeling sympathetic, Boxo transforms and provides them with free food, boosting morale. They meet with the director of the labyrinth and inform her that the recent attacks were orchestrated by the Nether Lord. She looks stricken, ashamed that the information never reached her, and bitterly calls herself the worst director in the dungeon. Later, Director Bear reports that he checked all the item shops, but magic stones are completely sold out. Their only hope is to find one inside the labyrinth itself. He resolves to go searching personally, taking Boxo with him. But before they can leave, a sudden commotion echoes through the streets. Boxo quickly transforms into his smaller form for safety, while Director Bear rushes off to see what's going on. They come across a young girl named Kakuyu standing defensively while surrounded by snarling monsters. Just as the creatures prepare to pounce, Director Bear leaps into action, swiftly dispatching the nearest threats and pulling her out of danger. At the same time, Boxo transforms back into his original vending machine form, startling Kakuyu, who hadn't expected to see such a strange transformation. Before she can comment, her companions, an imposing rhino and a sharp-eyed bird, move into formation as if on instinct. Kakuyu quickly warns everyone, telling them to cover their ears. The bird lets out a piercing sonic cry that reverberates through the battlefield, stunning the monsters. The rhino then charges with incredible power, finishing them off with ease. Director Bear watches, clearly impressed, remarking on how skilled and coordinated they are. Kakuyu smiles faintly and explains that her companions are special. They were granted greater strength by someone's power. This makes Boxo curious, silently wondering who she might be referring to. Once the fight is over, Kakuyu summons a ball of dirt that rolls across the ground, absorbing the remains of the fallen monsters. Director Bear asks about the strange ability, but Kakuyu politely says she'll explain later after she learns more about who they are. Director Bear nods, formally introducing himself, and explains that Boxo is no ordinary object. He's a magic item with a human soul inside, allowing him to speak and think. Kakuyu introduces her companions as well, naming the rhino Boden and the bird Kuryata. Boxo then wonders if she herself possesses special powers. She nods and reveals that she can control cold air and even move without being noticed, though she admits she isn't strong enough to fight monsters alone. That's why she relies on Boden and Kuryata, who fight of their own free will rather than following orders like tamed animals. Director Bear then notices Kakuyu seems to be talking to someone everyone, and she clarifies that she was answering Boxo's unspoken questions. She reveals a rare gift. She can hear the inner voice of anyone she touches. With a bright smile, she suggests that they share a meal while continuing their conversation. Boxo starts to prepare his lineup of items, but Kakoyu stops him, insisting that she will provide the food this time. She places a small plant on the dirt ball, which immediately starts to grow, sprouting vibrant leaves before their eyes. She explains that the dirt ball is a piece of field, an enchanted soil that absorbs monsters as nutrients and uses them to rapidly grow crops. She harvests some sweet potatoes from the sprouting plants and begins cooking them over a small fire. While they wait for the food to cook, Kakoyu decides to tell them a story, what she calls the true tale of the kind field. Long ago, she says, an elderly woman lived alone in a remote village. One day, a soul from another world took root in her field, giving the soil life. Though the field could not speak, the woman tended it daily with great care, and the soul came to cherish her presence. Eventually, the woman grew old and passed away, leaving the living field alone. Heartbroken but determined, the field found companionship in animals and slowly grew stronger. One day, it saw a girl being chased by monsters and chose to intervene, saving her life. That moment became a turning point. The field decided to journey across the land to help even more people. Its travels eventually led it to a fortified city under attack by the Demon Lord's army. The field joined the defenders, playing a key role in saving the city. It even marched alongside the army to the Demon Lord's stronghold, where it fought valiantly in a fierce battle. But during the retreat, the field exhausted its strength and lost consciousness, allowing its companions to escape. Boxo listens intently and realizes that Kakoyu and her companions must be the very friends mentioned in the story. Kakoyu confirms it with a wistful expression, explaining that they've been searching for Field ever since, hoping to reunite with it. Unfortunately, the Demon Lord's domain is cut off by a massive, impenetrable wall, leaving them unable to continue their journey. She explains that they entered the labyrinth after hearing rumors that the Nether Lord might be inside, thinking he could help them reach the Demon Lord's domain. But after hearing Director Bear describe the situation, she realizes that the Nether Lord won't be of any help to her quest. By then, the sweet potatoes are ready. She serves them to Director Bear, who takes a bite and praises her cooking, saying it tastes wonderful. Kakoyu smiles but insists that Field's vegetables are on a completely different level, 10 times more delicious than what she has just served. Boxo gives the group some drinks, and when Kakoyu takes her first sip, her eyes widen in surprise. The drink is refreshingly cold, unlike anything she has tasted before, and she happily notes how delicious it is. Director Bear smiles and tells her that Boxo isn't just limited to drinks. He can also provide food and various other items. This revelation surprises Kakoyu, and she remarks that Boxo reminds her of Field. When Boxo explains that he's also from another world, Kakoyu immediately gets excited and insists that Boxo and Field should meet someday, convinced that they must come from the same place. Boxo decides to accompany Kakoyu on her travels, and as the day goes on and the sun begins to set, the group agrees to set up camp. Boxo transforms into his family Mart form, and Kakoyu is absolutely thrilled at the sight of the colorful sweets and snacks on display. She excitedly grabs a handful, determined to try every single one. After sampling them, she declares that they are all delicious, though she notes that if she paired them with Field's fruit, they would taste even better. As night falls, Kakoyu eventually dozes off, leaving Boxo and Director Bear to chat quietly by the campfire. Director Bear asks Boxo what he thinks of the girl. Boxo replies that she seems like a good kid, cheerful and kind-hearted. But Director Bear shakes his head and tells Boxo that Kakoyu is not quite as simple as she appears. Despite looking like a child, she possesses abilities that ordinary humans don't. He suspects that she is actually a snow child. Boxo, unfamiliar with the term, asks what that means. Director Bear explains that snow children retain the appearance of 6-year-olds until they reach adulthood and are known to possess unique powers. Unfortunately, they are often hunted because of a terrible rumor that if a snow child is decapitated, their body turns into an ice statue that never melts, and the severed head curses the entire region. These curses are said to have wiped out entire nations. Boxo shudders at the thought, appalled by the idea of killing someone just to create a curse. Director Bear then mentions the legend of the Headless Eyes statue, a powerful powerful artifact said to be able to lift curses. He believes it might be the key to saving Kelroy's son, but Boxo quickly realizes that if Croy ever discovers Kakoyu's identity, he might try to kill her to use her curse. Director Bear agrees and warns Boxo to keep this knowledge secret. The next day, Director Bear slays a monster, and its body leaves behind a glowing magic stone. He inspects it carefully, but isn't sure if it contains enough power to repair the transfer circle they need. The group decides to return for now, but they run into a problem. Kakuyu is unable to pass through a magical wall because she's holding a piece of Field's remains. She refuses to leave it behind, clearly attached to it. Hulami then suggests an idea, and Boxo creates a protective barrier around Kakuyu, allowing her to pass safely through the wall with Field's piece. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief when it works. Later, Hulami announces that she has finished tuning the transfer circle, meaning she will be able to join them on their next trip into the labyrinth. The following day, they set out again with a new objective: to defeat the lava fiend and claim its powerful magic stone. The group acknowledges that this creature is even more dangerous than a straight lord, but they remain confident that they can bring it down by working together. Kakoyu sends Kuryata ahead to track the monster's location. That evening, as they settle down to rest, Hulami asks who will handle dinner. Kakoyu volunteers, but Boxo reminds everyone that he has plenty of sweets available. Hulami's face lights up instantly, since she loves sugary treats, and the group ends up choosing Boxo's convenience store meals instead. Kakoyu pouts, thinking the decision was a bit unfair, but ultimately goes along with it. The next morning, Boxo wakes up feeling well-rested for the first time in a while, as Kakoyu had volunteered to take the night watch so he could sleep. When he looks around, he's surprised to see that she has already prepared breakfast for everyone. He realizes that this was her plan all along, to let him rest and then surprise him with a meal. The group enjoys breakfast together, praising Kakoyu's cooking. Suddenly, Kuryata rushes back, reporting that it has found the lava fiend. Hulami immediately starts strategizing, explaining that she knows how to bring the creature down. Boxo then flies alongside Kuryata to observe the monster for himself. He quickly traps it by surrounding it with his conjured walls, then sprays it with freezing water, hoping to weaken it by exploiting its weakness to low temperatures. Bowden suddenly charges forward, its hooves thundering against the ground as it lowers its horn and rams straight into the lava fiend's weak point. The attack is so forceful that the massive creature collapses with a roar of pain, molten rock splattering everywhere. For a moment, it seems like the battle is over, until the fiend's body starts to bubble and knit itself back together, regenerating before their eyes. Boxo's heart sinks as he realizes they're in serious trouble. But then, before anyone can react, the sky above them seems to crack like glass. With a deafening crash, a gigantic block of ice plummets down and smashes into the lava fiend, freezing and crushing it completely. When the dust settles, everyone turns to see Llamas walking toward them, her usual confident grin on her face. She casually greets them, saying she's glad to see Boxo again. But instead of relief, Boxo feels irritation bubble up inside him. He scolds her for being reckless, pointing out that she could have been seriously hurt. Director Bear steps in, asking what exactly happened. Llamas explains that she and Director Origin had been transferred to Clearflow Lake. While there, she figured that hitting a straight split with enough force might make it open again, so she punched the frozen pond with all her strength, then used Hulami's magic item to safely fall from the sky. Director Bear sighs in relief, saying they were all just worried about her safety. Llamas apologizes for being so reckless, and Hulami, smiling warmly, says she's just happy they're all back together again. With the group reunited, Hulami announces that she has successfully repaired the transfer circle. Director Bear uses it first, returning to Clearflow Lake. She then tells Kakoyu to go next, and Kakoyu departs with her companions. Finally, Boxo prepares to transfer with Hulami and Llamas. But just as they are about to teleport, a red light suddenly flares from the circle. Hulami immediately notices something is wrong. There shouldn't be any issues since the circle is perfectly repaired. Boxo feels a jolt of dread and realizes they might be separated again. Thinking quickly, he activates his barrier and expands it around the group to keep them together. The transfer activates, and when they open their eyes, they find themselves deep in the dark forest strait. Boxo lets out a sigh of relief that his idea worked, but Hulami frowns, puzzled why the circle malfunctioned when the others used it without any problems. Llamas points out that the red light seemed to come from Boxo himself. Concerned, Hulami examines Boxo closely and discovers a faint magical signature, a malfunction spell. Boxo, immediately, realizes that Calroy must have placed it on him before escaping. Hulami carefully removes the spell but warns that it will take several days before the transfer circle can recharge again. She then reveals that they are currently on the 7th Strait, one of the most dangerous zones, overrun by plant monsters. As they move deeper into the forest, they spot a strange tree with an eerily human-like shape. Llamas mutters that it almost looks like a person. Hulami grimly confirms that monsters in this strait can turn people into trees. Before they can investigate further, the sound of battle reaches their ears. They rush toward the noise and find Sui and Heidi locked in combat against a swarm of carrot-shaped monsters. Llamas immediately leaps into action, pummeling the creatures with her fists and smashing them into pulp. Heidi breathes a sigh of relief, saying he's glad for the extra help. Meanwhile, Sui rushes to Boxo, clutching her stomach dramatically and telling him she's been waiting for him because she's starving. Boxo transforms into a snack vending machine, and Sui eagerly grabs food, sharing it with her companions. The entire group digs in happily, relieved to have some meat again. As they eat, Heidi explains that the people living in this strait mostly survive on vegetables since there are no animals here to hunt for meat. Liz curiously asks why the houses are still intact if plant monsters roam freely. Heidi explains that the monsters never attack structures made from trees since they only harm living vegetation. Hulami frowns, glancing at the tree-like shapes they had passed earlier, and asks if those were once people. Heidi nods grimly, revealing that they were villagers who inhaled the Stratum Lord's pollen during a previous attack and were transformed. Hulami is surprised there are still survivors and asks if they managed to defeat the Stratum Lord. Heidi shakes his head, saying they only used fire to drive it away but would never attempt to burn it outright. Doing so could set the entire forest ablaze and destroy their village. He explains that the trees in this strait are extremely flammable, which is why fire magic and torches are strictly forbidden here. If the forest catches fire, the entire area would be destroyed. He also tells them that the villagers who are currently behaving strangely will return to normal once the Lord of the Strait is defeated. Llamas immediately asks where they can find this Strait Lord. He points toward a massive tree in the distance, towering above all others. He explains that the trees themselves shift and move aside whenever the Strait Lord passes, almost as if the forest obeys its will. Boxo realizes that the creature must have the ability to control the trees themselves, making it even more dangerous. But Heidi advises that they should take a break for now. Sui has eaten so much that she's completely unable to move, lying on the ground with a satisfied but pained look. That night, Llamas stands atop a watchtower with Boxo. The moonlight filters through the branches as she gazes out into the dark forest, her expression unusually calm. She suddenly tells him that when he's with her, she feels like she can do anything. Boxo is surprised by the heartfelt statement and simply thanks her, which makes her tilt her head and say, "That's a strange response." She then steps closer to him, and Boxo freezes, thinking for a moment that she's about to kiss him. But instead, she suddenly spins and crushes a monster that had been sneaking up behind them with one punch. She reminds him with a grin that they're supposed to be keeping watch, not daydreaming. The next morning, Sui happily reveals that the group has been eating the vegetable monsters that attack the village every night. To everyone's surprise, she says they actually taste delicious. Before anyone can respond, a swarm of watermelon-shaped monsters appears from the forest, rolling toward the village. Sui immediately fires a volley of arrows at them, explaining with a laugh that she doesn't have to worry about running out of arrows since they're surrounded by trees that can be turned into shafts. A villager arrives, bringing her a fresh bundle of arrows. He then turns to Llamas, recognizing that she possesses the rare blessing of might, but scolds her for wasting it by only using her fists. He urges her to come to his weapon shop. Curious, Llamas decides to go there, bringing Boxo and Hulami along. Inside the shop, they are amazed by the quality of the weapons. Finely forged swords, spears, and hammers line the walls, gleaming under the lantern light. Llamas' eyes are drawn to a brilliantly colored cloth hanging in the corner. The merchant explains that it's a special water-repellent fabric meant for ceremonial use, not for sale. But Llamas Llamas drapes it over herself anyway, smiling at how it feels. Boxo can't help but notice how good it looks on her and quietly resolves to convince the merchant to sell it. The merchant then shows them a set of magical stones that grow heavier the longer you hold them. Hulami identifies them as measuring stones used to gauge strength. Llamas casually picks one up, remarking that it feels light, but when she hands it to Hulami, the poor girl nearly drops it. The merchant, impressed, challenges Llamas to try the heaviest stone he owns. She lifts it without effort, saying it only feels about as heavy as Boxo. The merchant is stunned and promises to forge her the ultimate weapon worthy of her strength. Later, Boxo asks his companions about the strait's director. Hedy and Sui say he's not really a bad person, but they exchange odd glances and seem strangely evasive. Suspicious, Boxo decides to meet the man himself, taking Llamas and Hulami along. They are greeted by the self-proclaimed Director Dark, who reveals that he's actually a darkness fiend. But instead of being menacing, Dark is, surprisingly, chatty, constantly cracking bad jokes and puns. Before long, they all realize he's more of a harmless weirdo than a villain. Dark eagerly asks to try one of Boxo's drinks, so Boxo dispenses sweet tea for him. Dark gulps it down and immediately starts raving about how good it tastes, but he just won't stop talking. Thinking fast, Boxo transforms into a TV vending machine and plays a comedy video featuring two performers on stage. Dark suddenly goes quiet, watching intently, and finally stops chattering. After that, Dark agrees to guide them through the forest. Along the way, they encounter a group of monsters, but they defeat them with ease. Dark instructs Llamas to clear a path by removing the obstructing trees, so she starts ripping them out of the ground and tossing them toward the village. This continues for days as she tirelessly creates a passage through the dense forest. However, Hulami eventually becomes frustrated. At this pace, it will take far too long to reach the Straight Lord's lair. She suggests that they might make faster progress if they search directly for the commander. Just then, Director Bear suddenly arrives with the rest of the group, surprising everyone. Hulami is especially shocked. She thought the teleportation circle was still out of magic and wouldn't be working for a while. Shim reveals that he used his magic to activate the device, and Hulami is clearly impressed. She knows just how much precision and skill it takes to pull off something like that. Director Bear, however, quickly shifts the focus back to the task at hand. He mentions that they still need to confront Dark, but when he looks around, he sees Dark's companions nervously trying to come up with excuses to stay behind. None of them want to deal with him. Director Bear firmly tells them to come along anyway, saying that he's not about to face Dark by himself. Together, they head toward the village. When they arrive, Director Bear instructs Kakoyu to carry out the next step of their plan. Kakoyu immediately calls Boxo over and tells him that she needs his help. Boxo sets up and begins preparing lunch for all the villagers, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. As the food is handed out, Kakoyu discreetly touches each villager, using her ability to read their thoughts while keeping the act casual. Finally, she finds the person she's been searching for and subtly signals Boxo. He quietly records the girl's face for evidence. When the group reviews the recording, they all realize with shock that the girl is actually one of the Nether Lord's commanders. Director Bear wastes no time and shows the recording to Dark, who is stunned by the revelation. Director Bear states that they need to learn more about her motives and what she's been ordered to do. Boxo suggests that Hedy might be the best one to extract information from her, and Director Bear agrees, instructing him to proceed. Dark insists that he'll personally arrest her to make sure she doesn't escape. Afterward, they lock the girl in the dungeon. Hedy steps in and uses his sensory manipulation ability to create a powerful illusion that makes her believe she is standing before the real Nether Lord. When she regains consciousness, she sees him and immediately begins answering his questions. Hedy asks her when she first started working with him, and she confesses that the Nether Lord appeared to her 2 months ago. He promised to pay off her crippling gambling debt if she agreed to follow his orders. She explains that he instructed her to defend the village while posing as a hunter and used his ring to control the nearby monsters to help her maintain her cover. Hedy presses further, asking if she remembers anything else. She hesitates, then adds that she encountered the group of misfits about 2 weeks ago. They appeared to be searching for someone, but when they couldn't find that person, they left. Boxo quietly speculates that they were likely searching for missing members of their team. Hetty, on the other hand, gets distracted and suddenly considers removing her boots just so he can smell them. Before he can act, Dark kicks him away in disgust, snapping the girl out of the illusion. She, suddenly, realizes that everything she just saw was a hallucination. Dark looks at her with disappointment and anger, telling her that he trusted her and even gave her money because he believed she would quit gambling and turn her life around. And that's where this video ends. If you enjoyed the breakdown, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content. Thanks for watching.